One was his father's modern facade, a prince who, in European circles, displayed a civilized face of a brutal regime. Another was a ruthless warrior who dominated the army and national security. And then there were the others, princes whose corruption and extravagance were legendary throughout the world. Within the court of Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, a ruthless Game of Thrones was underway, a hidden struggle among sons to inherit their father's oil empire. But they did not know they were fighting over a cursed legacy. This is the fall of the House of Gaddafi. Welcome to Profile. We go behind the headlines to unmask the truths of modern history. If you seek the stories others miss, subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Now, let's go inside the court of the Colonel. For 4 decades, Colonel Muammar Gaddafi was not only the undisputed ruler of Libya, but the absolute patriarch of a powerful family. His empire was less of a state and more of a private estate, destined to one day be inherited by his sons. But behind this dictator stood women whose roles in this power game were no less significant than his own. His first wife, Fathia Nouri Khaled, was a school teacher who separated from Gaddafi before he rose to power. From this brief marriage came one son, Muammar Gaddafi. As the eldest son, he was kept away from the primary center of power. He entered the worlds of business and telecommunications and took over the presidency of the Libyan Olympic Committee. He was a Saif prince who never laid claim to the throne. But the true queen of this court was Safiya Farkash, the nurse who captured the young colonel's heart and became the mother of his 6 other sons and 1 daughter. Safiya was a quiet woman, but possessed deep influence. She knew that the future of this empire depended on the unity of her sons, and for this unity, she had a definitive choice. According to Mohammed al-Zwai, the last head of the Libyan parliament, Safiya Farkash repeatedly gathered her sons and told them, "You must stand behind your eldest brother." That eldest brother was Saif al-Islam Gaddafi. He was the uncrowned crown prince of this empire, the architect of the regime's seemingly reformist face. A son with a PhD in economics from London, fluent in English, an artist, and a lover of wild animals. He was his father's mastermind and hope for modernizing Libya. Muammar Gaddafi himself, in a grand gathering of the country's elite, had officially introduced him as the best option for the future of Libya. But every crown prince needs a rival, and Saif al-Islam's main rival was his brother, Mutassim Gaddafi, the symbol of his father's military might and ruthlessness. Mutassim was the national security advisor and commander of the elite guard. He considered his older brother too tayyib, or, as Libyans say, too soft and kind to rule. This drama also featured supporting actors: Hannibal Gaddafi, the family's troublemaker and a symbol of international scandals and corruption, and Saadi Gaddafi, the failed footballer and professional playboy. Among the sons of Gaddafi, perhaps none symbolized the vanity and surreal extravagance of the regime as much as Saadi Gaddafi. He was a living, tragic comedy, a prince who dreamed of becoming a world-class football star but ultimately became one of the most notorious figures in the sporting and political world. In Libya, Saadi was the king of football. He was the president of the Football Federation and owned a significant share of the Al-Ali Tripoli club. His word was law. But his ambition reached far beyond the borders of his country. Saadi dreamed of playing in Italy's Serie A, the most prestigious football league in the world at the time. In 2003, this unbelievable dream became a reality. Through a deal that smelled more of oil than grass, and with the mediation of then Italian Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi, who maintained close ties with the Libyan leader, Saadi joined the Italian club Perugia. The result was farcical. Throughout the entire season, he played only a few minutes as a substitute. His professional career in Italy ended in scandal when he tested positive for doping. To chase this hollow dream, he spared no expense. He hired the legendary Diego Maradona as his private consultant and the disgraced Canadian sprinter Ben Johnson as his speed coach. However, this football fantasy had a very dark and bloody side. When Bashir al-Rayani, one of Libya's most popular players and coaches, explicitly stated that Saadi had no talent for football, a bitter fate awaited him. Al-Rayani was arrested, tortured, and eventually killed under suspicious circumstances. To this day, the finger of blame points directly at Saadi. But it didn't stop there. Saadi was also accused of kidnapping and torturing several other players simply for refusing to join his team. Outside the pitch, Saadi's life in Europe was an endless party funded by Libya's oil wealth. He spent millions of dollars hosting private parties with world-famous singers, maintained a fleet of luxury cars, and owned a massive yacht. In the height of this absurdity, this playboy prince simultaneously held the rank of general, commanding one of the elite brigades of the Libyan Special Forces, a commander who spent more time in European nightclubs than in military barracks. While the world knew Libya through the face of a single, absolute dictator, a brutal Cold War for succession was unfolding behind the palace walls, a real-life Game of Thrones between two brothers with polar opposite philosophies on how to maintain power. Saif al-Islam was the architect of the regime's soft face. Through his charity foundation, his Western education, and his successful negotiations, such as the release of the Bulgarian nurses and the lifting of international sanctions, he aimed to show the world that Libya could change. His strategy was to gain power through diplomacy and influence in international circles. As Muhammad al-Zawahiri notes, he was his father's ultimate choice for the future of Libya. But Mutassim viewed these methods as a sign of weakness. He believed only in hard power, the language of guns and the military. As the national security advisor, he sought to consolidate his power through intimidation and by bypassing the law. According to al-Zawahiri, he was the only son who dared to stand up to his father and even shout in his face. This rivalry was not just a difference of opinion. It was a full-scale power struggle that sometimes bordered on military rebellion. In one of the most famous confrontations, Mutassim, aiming to flaunt his military might, ordered hundreds of tanks under his command to start their engines in the middle of the night near Gaddafi's residence. The thunderous roar of the tank engines woke the colonel, who was furious and personally ordered them to be shut down immediately. But in an act of open revolt, Mutassim's officers ignored the direct command of the Libyan leader himself. This defiance was a red line for Gaddafi. The next day, he dissolved that armored battalion and exiled Mutassim to Egypt for a period of time. However, Mutassim eventually returned with even more power, continuing his struggle against his brother. This war even extended to the international stage. Saif al-Islam, with his fluent English and close ties to British politicians, presented himself as the West's man in Libya. Mutassim, in an attempt to mimic and compete with his brother, tried to establish ties with the Americans. But according to officials from that era, his violent temperament was never accepted by the West. The prize of this Game of Thrones was not just succeeding their father, but controlling the legendary wealth of an oil-rich nation. Libya had been transformed into a family estate, divided among the sons like personal fiefdoms. Each controlled a segment of the country's economy as their own private property. Saif al-Islam dominated oil and infrastructure contracts. Mutassim controlled the massive security and military budgets. Saadi invested in sports and construction, while Hannibal seized control of maritime transport and imports. This balance of power, built on fear, rivalry, and corruption, lasted for decades. But this family empire stood on the most fragile of foundations. The Arab Spring was approaching, and the Game of Thrones was about to turn into a bloody battle for survival. In February 2011, the fire that had ignited in Tunisia and Egypt reached the borders of Libya. The family empire, which for 4 decades had strangled every voice of dissent in its infancy, was suddenly faced with its greatest challenge: the rage of a nation that was no longer afraid. In this critical moment, all the masks fell. Saif al-Islam, the seemingly reformist prince, pointed a threatening finger at the people and promised rivers of blood, while his military brothers, Mutassim and Khamis, unleashed the machinery of repression. The Game of Thrones was over. Now, there was only one goal: survival at any cost. But the tide of revolution was more powerful than any crackdown could contain. With NATO intervention and the fall of Tripoli in August 2011, the empire crumbled. The palaces were looted, and the Gaddafi family scattered across the country. This was the final act in the lives of the princes. Mutassim, the fierce warrior, resisted alongside his father until the very last moment in the city of Sirte. His fate was a mirror of his father's. After his capture, he was killed under mysterious and violent circumstances. He was buried, along with the colonel, in an unmarked location in the Libyan desert. Khamis, the commander of the elite 32nd Brigade, disappeared amidst the battles. A year after the fall of the regime, Libyan sources reported that the 29-year-old Khamis had been killed during an armed clash between militias in the city of Bani Walid. Saadi, the failed footballer, managed to flee to the country of Niger, but his freedom was short-lived. In 2014, the Libyan government extradited him after paying a massive sum of money. Saadi was tried and imprisoned for years on charges of murdering Bashir al-Rayani and torturing other players. He was finally released in 2021 and made his way to Turkey. Hannibal, the troublemaker, fled to Algeria with his mother Safia, his brother Muhammad, and his sister Aisha, later settling in Syria as a political refugee. But fate had an unexpected end for him as well. In 2015, he was kidnapped from Syria by a Lebanese militia and taken to Lebanon, where he remains in custody today for his alleged role in the disappearance of Imam Musa Sadr. As for Saif al-Islam, the failed crown prince, he was captured by militias from the city of Zintan, deep in the Libyan desert, while attempting to flee to Niger. He spent years in a prison in that city, while simultaneously being sentenced to death by a court in Tripoli and sought by the International Criminal Court. In 2017, he was mysteriously released and disappeared for several years. Many believed his story was over, until 2021, when he shocked the world by emerging from hiding and officially registering as a candidate for the Libyan presidential election. It was a surreal return. Documents later revealed that during all those years, he had been negotiating with Russian intelligence services to return to power. Although his candidacy was ultimately disqualified, this move showed that for him, the game is not yet over. Today, nothing remains of that family empire but ruins. One son lies in an unmarked grave, 2 are in prison or exile, 2 more are in self-imposed exile, and 1 failed heir remains in the shadows, dreaming of reclaiming a throne that no longer exists. But what is your judgment? Was this the inevitable end of a dictatorship, or the tragic collapse of a nation? Let's talk in the comments below. If this profile gave you a new perspective, support our mission with a like and share. Thank you for being part of the Profile community. Until next time, stay curious.